How's everyone doing? We're good? Excellent. So the topic for today's discussion is showing up in the moments that matter. And indeed, there are different moments that matter in our life. Sometimes they're at work, but sometimes they're at home, right? These two things are often very bridged. There's no work in life, just life, right? And so we're going to talk about that. How can we show up more in the moments that matter? And in particular, we're going to be drawing on insights from two places. One is the world's largest brain database that was started by Dr. Evian Gordon, neuroscientist, integrative neuroscientist, and has over 750,000 standardized data sets that they're drawing insights from at a company called Total Brain. And the second thing we're going to talk about is more human-centered leadership, right? How do we create more resilience, more presence in those moments that matter? And how do we coalesce as teams through incredibly challenging situations? And I'll be drawing insights from the world's most renowned expert in meditation, breathing, and really creating belonging in the workplace, Sri Ravi Shankar. So really looking forward to the discussion, and then I'll be calling up two distinguished panelists, and it should be a great conversation. But just quickly, I'd love to know from the audience, how many of you have been through or are currently going through major digital transformations or disruptions in your industry? Just a show of hands. Okay. Most of the room, it looks like, yeah. So of course, this is the context we live in. We live in a world where we both have to maintain, keep up, and accelerate, right? And you can see that red line is sort of the expectations coming to us, but often we're not in a context vacuum. We have legacy things going on, legacy people, legacy systems, etc., right? So for that, we have Louis Gagnon, who took a team at Audible from 200 million to 1 billion in a 2-year period. And then just another quick show of hands. How many of you are actively doing cultural programs around retaining talent or working on really trying to have excellent customer care? Just a show of hands. Okay, so both indicators are really good because that's what we're going to be talking about. So it looks like most of you, this will be of interest. And of course, we all want to bring our lives to brand. You know, Richard Branson is sort of the prototype of this, right? Of creating fun, alive brands, both at our customer touchpoints and internally. And so what do? We invest huge amounts of resources in these things. Some of our clients are investing 10, 20, 30, $50 million and trying to create these type of transformations, right? And we hire great consultants and we get great people. But then still, all too often, even despite our best efforts, we still fail sometimes. Here from Gallup, 70% of change initiatives fail. You could say, even if you disagree with it, you could say well above 50. 80% of mergers fail, HBR. And 84% of digital transformations, those things that are so dependent on our ability to accelerate and compete, 84%, according to Forbes, are failing. And so many of us end up looking like this guy, right? Kind of wondering, what happened? What happened? Why didn't it work? And I'm going to propose, there are obviously many reasons, I'm going to propose 2 brain insights and 4 human-centric leadership principles that may explain why. So the first one is we are hardwired for safety first, right? So I've worked out an experiment with the HCI, let's just pretend for a moment, the HCI staff, and we're going to open those ballroom doors, and 2 huge lions are going to come running in the room, right? What are we going to do? We're going to run, right? This safety first mechanism is going to serve us because that's what it was built for. But when we're dealing with change in the workplace, which is also a threat, what happens? What's the result of that threat that's coming from outside? Maybe it means our skills are redundant. Maybe it means our departments are redundant, right? And so what are we going to do? We're going to protect. We're going to defend. We're going to close off. Right? So at the very moment we need to be opening up, connecting, collaborating, and pushing forward, we're going to be more closed. The second principle that we know from the data in this database and in neuroscience in general is we are not as rational as we think we are. particularly in the context of change, right? So why does this matter? Why does it matter? Because we can sit there and explain to people all day and night why we need to change, how we're going to change, right? But if they see it as threat, what are they going to do? Their non-conscious signals are going to be, and there's graphs of the brain that show this. They're going to be firing up, right? These emotions are going to be nudging us toward safety first, right? And even if we're saying the right things and showing up in the right things, we're actually sabotaging. We're actually holding the process back. So we're not as rational as we think we are. And so what we use and what we recommend is what's called the Gordon spectrum. So Evian Gordon is the scientist. So first, measure what matters. Measure where your people are. We do this through this neural assessment in the world's largest brain database, but there's other ways of doing it. And see, are your populations primed for change? We invest a lot in the technology side of change and culture, but how much are we investing in the people side as a comparison, given what we know about the resistance to change? And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have open, right? Self-mastery, ability to manage stress, flexibility, cognitive flexibility, many of the things that are in the future skills of the workforce, right? And I encourage any of you, we have a free trial for an assessment at our booth, and we're also happy to open source this scale, the Dr. Evian Gordon scale. But what does that mean in scientific terms? What do you mean practically, Johan? What are you trying to tell us? What kind of priming could that be? Well, I'm gonna first just say it's taking people from a sympathetic response to change, or knowing if that's how they're responding, to a parasympathetic response. Just putting that into normal nomenclature, knowing, are our people in a place where they're going to protect, defend, be closed? Or can we prime them into vagal tone where they can be open, expanded? And in my own work, I've seen generative teams are always in that more expanded space. They're not in that closed defensive space, right? Because that's not where innovation happens. And then the three human-centered principles to this, which I'm going to recommend, is to target those interventions in ways that are extremely calibrated. And this goes to the data. Understand the populations before you go in and start doing the interventions in an ad hoc sort of way, and then construct around it. So be targeted. Evian Gordon, this neuroscientist, says the difference between peak performers and average or below average is they just train differently. They calibrate, they focus in on the things that matter, and they do them. The other is just understanding our own mind and emotions. So that's a big part of how we show up in these moments that matter. And actually, let's do an experiment. Let's everybody put their arms up. And if you have carpal tunnel or something, don't do this. If you're competitive, please do this. And what we're going to do is we're going to open and close our hands as fast as we can. So we're just going to go like this. And you can stop at any time. But for those of us who are really great, we can go a little bit faster. And you could stop at any time, but if you're competitive, we'll just keep going a little bit faster. Right? And we'll keep going. And now we're going to see who the true marathoners are in the room. Right? Yeah, so let's keep going. And you can stop any time. Okay, we'll shake our hands. So what happened? What did I say? You keep going. We can stop any time, right? This is the signal our people are getting all the time, right? Keep going. You can stop any time. We care about you, right? we want you to be refreshed, and yeah. And this is very much part of our work ethos, the American ethos, really. Which is when things are challenging, what do? Dig in. Push harder. Be better. Right? And that can have results. People who get outstanding results do that. But we can also learn to let go. How long can you hold your fist? How long can you hold a change process in a company without a gap, without a breath? Right? So we really recommend, and we work with empirically validated restorative techniques. Some people can say that's soft. I would say it's essential based on the brain description I was just giving you. Right? The second is around social connection and trust. How do we truly build those human moments in companies? We're surrounded by people We spend most of our life at work. We're wired, right? We have thousands of friends on LinkedIn, but yet we're more socially isolated than we were 20 years ago. Right? And so you're going through these big change, these threats, and we're also feeling quite alone in it, or at least our people are. Right? So we really recommend human moments. Creating human moments, not just your cocktail hour. Really know the person you're in the trenches with. And so that's the second thing. And then the third is practice what works. So we recommend practicing those two things. But if we do not habituate, if we do not practice what works, we do not get the benefits. We can know it all day. We can read articles all day, watch TED Talks all day. We will not get the benefits. And specific to the brain database, there's a few markers. One, the first time we do something, it's very powerful. Seven, we're starting to establish a pattern. 20, we're starting to get statistically significant benefit toward that pattern. 30, we've started to form a new pattern. We have a new pattern. And 1,000, it's effortless for us. It's part of the way that we do things. So practice what works. And just speaking of excellence, and I've had an outstanding privilege to work with both of these gentlemen at Amazon and Intuit. And so I want to just have a panel discussion around some of these topics. So I would like to invite up Louis Gagnon and Rajneesh Gupta. Good. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. And one of the biggest critiques in the leadership industry is that you have these perfectly formed case studies, right? You have these perfect narratives about how you did it, and all of those who are in the leadership, we know, right? It's never that perfect. For how many people is it perfect, these change executions? Yeah, no one, right? So I thought maybe on the topic of showing up in the moments that matter, what are moments that matter to you? What are moments that you had to show up just for an authenticity moment? It could be in your current roles or in an old role, and you felt a little vulnerable, or you weren't sure. Louis, you want to start?
Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody. I just got my job at Audible, Chief Product Marketing Officer. Audible is the baby of Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is a very literary person, and he has very high expectations for what we're going to do. He welcomed me in the company. And I come in January, and the plan I have is not the plan that I think is going to succeed. And I tell my boss at Audible, this is not going to work. And he says, write an email to Jeff, and then let's see what happens. I write the email on Saturday, and Sunday at 1 p.m., I get a reply from Jeff that says, we are so not aligned. It's not funny. So I'm thinking, okay, that was my first interaction with my new boss. And we are in a completely different planet, and this guy is probably one of the smartest person on earth. So how am I going to deal with that? I knew that I had a very rational case, but I was scared. And I called my brother, who's a coach, and he tells me, Louis, here's a technique for you. First, be aware. Go in and see how you feel, and then do this when you come into this room. He's going to be with other people. When you come in, close your eyes and draw a triangle with your heart that brings them in, and then do your case. Emotionally signal the fact that you're not here to confront, you're here to include, you're here to solve a problem. I've never heard of anything that esoteric my entire life. And I said,
by the way, you know we're on camera, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just checking.
So I say, okay, well, I'm going to go do this and see what happened. And what happened was the most wonderful meeting in my career, where Jeff and people around the table left completely aligned, and we basically grew the company 50% a year from a baseline of 20 for the 2 subsequent years. It was just a fantastic moment. All of that based on an attitude, a feeling.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rajneesh.
I'll take an example from my work life with Intuit. Intuit, as you guys know, we are in the tax and accounting software business. So I got the opportunity to lead customer care for our tax business, which I thought was great. Any of you who've been in customer service, the most exciting job ever. First thing I did as I got the job is I did some side-by-sides with the agent so I could listen to and experience the calls firsthand. And what I realized was, my respect for the agents really grew up because that job is exhausting. Just listening to the calls for an hour, I was exhausted. And then the agents were over and over doing that all the time. And that was not in the tax season. This thing gets multiplied in the tax season because you get 90 days and everybody is working on their taxes and calling us during those 90 days. And we are obviously not staffed for that kind of peak, so customer wait times are longer, but also agents are more exhausted at that time because they are working longer hours, they are working weekends sometimes, and they're getting shorter breaks because they are on the call all the time. And those were the moments that really mattered to the customers because that's when they were filing their taxes and that's when they really needed our help. So as I looked at this, I said, we have to do something to help our agents do the best work of their lives in these moments that matter to the customers the most. And we invited the TLEX Institute to come and help our agents with the TLEX flagship program. And it received a tremendous reception in our company. The agents loved it. They thought it was a great professional and personal development tool. Many of them walked up to me, and one agent in particular, I remember, she walked up to me. She had never spoken to me before. She literally approaches me in the hallway, and she says, Rajneesh, I want to say something to you. This is the best thing anybody has ever done for us. So that was really touching for me as a new leader for the team. But also, this was not something that was surprising. I knew the agents would love it because the tools they were getting are really helpful. I had experienced those tools previously in my previous jobs. So I knew those tools are going to really help them and they're going to enjoy them. But what I wasn't sure about is it going to translate into business results? And as it would happen, life gave us the perfect opportunity in that tax season. We had some product challenges. And so, the wait times became a little bit longer, the customers became a little bit more frustrated, and the agents had a lot more exhaustion than they had previously experienced. But despite all this, at the end of the tax season, we actually, when something like this happens normally, you would expect that the customer service scores are going to tank. But in that season, we actually delivered an improvement over the past year in our customer service score. And I know a lot of that had been contributed by the techniques mind management techniques taught by the TLEX Institute that our agents had learned. So since then, I have become a big fan of those techniques, and I've offered to Johan to come and talk about our experience to anybody who cares to listen.
Great. And so, Louis, you got the job. Right now you got to deliver, going to that exponential growth curve that we showed, right? Mm-hmm. So what happened next, and how did it unfold? And
yeah. So then I have my first staff meeting, and I realize that I have 18 reports who are much more misaligned than what I was with Bezos. And not only misaligned, but emotionally very charged. These people had been fighting with each other for a long time. And so I had the insight of thinking, well, I started this gig with awareness. Why don't I continue on this and try to get my team to become aware of what they're holding and how we could together, conscious of where we're coming from and what we have and what we bring to the table, how could we actually transcend the state of alertness, the state of alert, not alertness, quite the opposite, that we're all living. So somebody introduced me to the work that Johan does, and I remember being on the phone with him and saying, hey, I've got a team that is really hard, really dysfunctional. What do you suggest? And he said, well, I have one solution. We should do restorative techniques and go breathe for a couple of days. So I went back to my team and I said, guys, we're going to go breathe for a couple of days. And there was a lot of skepticism in the room. And we still did it. And we all came out of it with a glimpse of ourselves, with an experience of ourselves, on which we could then build upon. And those people who were not on board with that program of being self-aware and on working on themselves and how they showed up to our moments had a hard time with me. The only rule was we need to be committed to grow personally if we're going to grow this business, and as a team. And so it's been quite the journey. Amazing turnaround. I saw people flourishing in all ways, and I have then really understood that the power of self-awareness was extremely strong. So then I said, how do I take this to the entire team? We've got 1,500 people at the time. How do we do this? And there was no way we could take everybody to a retreat to go breathe for 2 days. But is there a mechanism where we could institute some sort of check-in and some sort of discussions where we could spot the difficulties at the ground level? And so I had a meeting with the CTO of the company, me and him and everybody, thousands of people below us, where everybody was invited to that meeting every week. And we were asking the pizza teams at Amazon, your really small teams, everything is done around the concept of small independent team, enough people to feed them with the pizza, no more. So it's usually 7 to 8 people. We call them the pizza teams. So we had hundreds of pizza teams, and one after the other, the pizza teams were coming and sharing their work with us. And one of the things we did as part of this system is we asked everybody at the company once a week on Friday night, how do you feel? There's 6 emotions. What's your emotion right now? And we tracked emotional perception at individual, at the team level. So we could know in real time how the teams were tracking, in which area, so that we could get a sense of where in the organization would we have an issue. What was the trend in a product line? What was the trend in a location? That sort of thing. And this is something that really was transformative, not only for us, but most obviously for the people who felt that we were proactively addressing their issues. If there was one guy in a team of 12 saying, I am 0, we were doing something about it. It's not just going from 5 to 4.8 that would not happen, but let's say going down from 5 to 3 would be a big red flag, but any individual going significantly lower would be a flag for the team. What's happening? What can we do? Have we missed something? Did we miscommunicate? And so we were able to spot individual and team problems in advance, and building that concept was quite profitable for us, and this is something that I have promised myself that I would do at scale with depth one day, and this is definitely something that I believe has generated the changes we've implemented.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So Rajneesh, Intuit is a notoriously innovative company. They do the lean startup, the matrix grids. I know the way budgets are done is very interesting, sort of the lean startup sort of mindset, right? How do you kind of maintain that with the kind of people side, just as a leader in the organization?
Yeah, so, you can maintain that level of innovation only by paying attention to the people side of things, is my strong belief. I don't think true creativity, true innovation can come out of a mind that is stressed. So as a company, we pay a lot of attention on what we call our true north results, and the way we evaluate decisions is how does it affect our employees, our partners, our customers, and our shareholders in that order. So employees always come first in the effect our decisions are having on them. And our company now has invited the TLEX Institute many times, 5 times at least I know of, that the TLEX Institute has come and offered programs in a variety of capacities. But we are also, bringing together a variety of other mind management and mindfulness techniques that are available to our employees who can then benefit from it. Personally, I have benefited from it quite a bit, so I'm a big champion of this within the company as well. In fact, Louis' story with Jeff Bezos reminded me of my own story. If you allow me to share, I'm happy to do that too. Yeah. So I went to business school in India, and I graduated with my dream job with Boston Consulting Group. That was the job I wanted, and it was really a job I loved. A new young guy consultant having the opportunity to really work with and in many instances advise some of the most senior leaders in the Indian business was just an amazing feeling for me. But the job completely owned me. It was 24/7, and the stress of the job was literally taking me over. And so much so that 4 years down the line, I had a decision to make that, do I continue with this job that I love, but it's making me the kind of person I don't want to be? And I made the decision to leave the job and come to USA, United Stress of America. In a new culture, in a new job, with no friends, no family. I was trying to run away from a situation, but I didn't get myself into any better situation. But at that time, somebody introduced me to these techniques that are taught by the TLEX program, and I went to a program similar to the TLEX program. It was actually the TLEX program offered by Capital One, which was my company at that time. And it made a tremendous difference to me personally. It made me physically more strong. It made me emotionally more resilient. Spiritually, I felt more upliftment. And professionally, I started to do a lot better. When the mind is centered, you can just be more creative and work better with people. And since then, it has stayed with me, and I have tried to bring it to every team that I have been a part of, so more and more people can benefit from these techniques.
Yeah, very good. Well, we've said a lot. And there's so many interesting people in this room sitting next to you as well. So I just want to do a quick interactive process where you can meet some of your colleagues, where you can have a human moment here at CGI. So if you could just turn to the person next to you and share, if you can, really authentically. I know this thing of vulnerability, we hate it because it's threatening, right? And we're wired for safety first. But if you could just share with the person next to you, or three of you at the table, what was a moment that really mattered for you in your career? Maybe where somebody came through with a kind act, or you had to push through something. Whatever you're comfortable sharing, but more authentic the better, in my opinion. No risk, no reward. So you can just turn to the people, take a few minutes, and then we'll come back, hear reflections, and then go to questions. Good. So how was that for people? Good? Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Where we talk in data, but it's really stories, right? It's really connecting with others, that how we make meaning, and often how we share our journey. So, anybody want to share a reflection? We have a minute or two if anybody wants to just share a moment that mattered for them. No. Yeah, no need. It's probably a little nerve-wracking, right? Yeah, but I do recommend doing these types of things, particularly in a change context, right? If we see the human across from us versus the role, the function, the KPI that needs to get done, a lot of times that'll go a lot further. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but it's something that I've observed, is that we put a lot of emphasis on respect. So, like if this was an XY and you have connection here and respect here, we put a lot of emphasis on respect in work, right? But there's also often a distance. We want to be respected, and we also look up to certain people, but there's a little, and then on the other side you could say there's connection, and there are people we feel endeared to, but maybe we wouldn't trust them to an important task. And I think what's really more human-centric leadership is when you can marry those two. When we can create that belonging, that connection, right? But then also maintain that respect, also deliver on what we need to do. Good, so we'll open it up to questions if anybody has. Just a reminder, everybody has a mic at their table, so you can push the button, ask a question. You can direct it to any of the three of us, and we're happy to share. Good, well then I think we'll wrap a little bit early if there are no questions. And just if our team could raise their hands, we have a bunch of our team here, Corey over there, and we have Anna here, Josette, and we'd really look forward to having you guys at our booth and telling you more about what we do. And look forward to sharing in the rest of the experience of the conference with all of you. Thanks so much. Thank you.